Well, it looked like it was going to be the same old story for Ireland. Another moral victory that ended with no points. Went up leaped Shane Duffy to cause some chaos, and the Serbs were so afraid of that they whacked the ball into their own net. Welcome along to Team 33, Enda here, as we chat through the week of football. With me on the line are two debutants of the show, but like Andrew Omabedele, they will slot in no problem at all. Emma Carroll, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, thanks very much. I didn't realise I was just that was both of us our debuts, so at least getting that cap with Arthur is a good thing.
Exactly, like Stephen Kenny, I'm throwing you all in at the deep end at once just to get the caps, because you need to get the caps under your belt so you can actually get up to the speed of the show. Arthur O'Dea is the other debutant for the show. Arthur, how are you getting on?
Top notch, man. Doing well. Yeah, it's really sink or swim now, isn't it?
It is. But I've no doubt you will be swimming in no time. There is only one place to start, really. That is Ireland's 1-1 draw with Serbia on Tuesday night in the Aviva Stadium. Milinkovic-Savic getting the opener for the Serbs, but the other Milinkovic on the side with the OG on the 87th minute to save a point for Stephen Kenny. We'll start with general thoughts on the game. I mean, this was Stephen Kenny's second real game in front of Irish fans in the Aviva Stadium. And like I said, for so long in that game, it looked like it was going to be the exact same thing as what has been the theme for Stephen Kenny in this World Cup campaign. A good performance with nothing to show for it, and another loss under his belt and the pressure mounting. So, Arthur, I mean, the goal really changes the sort of thought process behind Stephen Kenny and the general, public support he's going to get over the next couple of days and couple of weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Like, I find myself, I'm a bit torn. Like, I'm sure like everyone else, and I was watching the match on RT last night, and it was very difficult, I found, listening to the commentary. And I love George Hamilton, but I just, the sort of the celebration stuff, I couldn't really get on board with that entirely. I know the late goal put the thing, but you're almost like, I thought it was pretty poor, to be honest with you. I thought it was as difficult to watch as not as difficult as Azerbaijan for the different circumstances, but in terms of just a spectacle and how Ireland played, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I tell you what, like, a lot of what's keeping me going now is just, I don't really, the people who are actively looking for Stephen Kenny to leave have turned into such a despicable kind of bunch with the way they're kind of getting their message across, that it's almost just sticking with it for that more so than anything. But I don't know. I struggle with the performance. I don't know about yourselves.
Yeah, I do want to come back to that sort of culture war that's going on within the Irish fan support just after we touched on the game. But Emma, I'm interested to get your thoughts. Do you think it was as poor as Arthur's making out here?
Yeah. The only standouts is Bazuna, really. Like, he's like Superman. And I suppose a couple of months ago, we all would have thought that Kelleher was nailed on to be the next in line for the number one spot. But I suppose that's the only shining light, really, is that, who's going to be Ireland's number one seems to be what we're talking about, instead of, we've this great goal scorer. We're relying on Shane Duffy, John Egan, and OGs to get us goals. Like, where do you go from there? Like,
yeah, it's such a weird one that while Stephen Kenny talks about trying to change the ethos of Irish football, the goals that we have scored have been Shane Duffy headers and OG for Serbia, and really and truly not well worked goals. I know there was good play in the build-up to some of these goals, but the goals themselves have been traditional Irish football goals, which is making it even more difficult to sort of make the case for what Stephen Kenny is trying to do here. But I guess I agree with you, Arthur, in the sense of the coverage of the game last night, and the commentary at the end was very victorious for a 1-1 draw against Serbia with an OG in the 87th minute, when really Ireland didn't really create all that many good chances. I did the player ratings, and I've tried to be a lot more statistical in my approach to back it up with the evidence towards it. People who don't like XG will not like the player ratings, but out of 18 shots, Serbia had an XG of 1.4, so they probably could have scored 2 goals in the game, where Ireland's XG at the end of the game was down at 0.3. So we didn't create many goal scoring opportunities, and we didn't create many chances that were really worth much in the end. But somehow we came out with a 1-1 draw, and I just felt it was almost like the draw felt like a victory, because I think those who support Stephen Kenny get another few weeks of this at least, because this does make him more comfortable in his role.
Yeah, and like any last minute equalizer or thereabouts, like, is always kind of cause to be excited. Like, it's, that's kind of understandable. I don't blame anyone like that. Like, but it was exciting in that regard, and sort of, I suppose, how farcical kind of the goal was. Well, just kind of made it a bit funny. But I think that's spot on. I think in terms of, there was kind of countless times over the last few games where they'll obviously, some good work will build up to it. They'll get a breakaway kind of just inside the opposition half, seem to be bearing down on goal. Granted, only maybe 2-3 players max, and then it just kind of generally amounts to nothing. And I don't know. And look, I mean, it's obviously, it's not easy, but I don't know where or how that gets kind of taught or coached, or it seems like something like that will be a long way off before we're all of a sudden kind of fluidly scoring goals. And again, it's a kind of case of, then you're kind of back to the same thing. Well, okay, time, but like, realistically, and again, I'm not calling for anyone to go, because I don't know who you'd replace Stephen Kenny with, regardless. But I don't know, like, just how much time, how long does that take to get right? How long before you kind of have a fluid attacking unit that you kind of necessarily will have to introduce different players in now and again? Is Adam Ida going to play again before we're back in October? Is Aaron Connolly? Troy Parrott will? Like, it's very, I'm a bit worried about that, to be honest with you.
Well, you see, that's an interesting point, because Adam Ida now, in his combined minutes in this World Cup campaign, has played more minutes in this World Cup campaign than he's playing for Norwich in the last year and a half. So these are the issues that Stephen Kenny's had to balance. And it is interesting that Troy Parrott's finally scoring and playing at club level, but it was Adam Ida that still got the nod ahead of him in all three of these games, especially in the third game, when he had already played pretty much the full game in the Azerbaijan and the Portugal game. So it's a difficult one to balance. Emma, where do you fall on the issues that we have in terms of getting these players minutes on the pitch, but also balancing that with results? Because I think that's the key issue here.
Trying to get a result at the moment just seems like an impossible task. Like 2 points so far is just not really good enough. In terms of goals, like, yeah, I can't see where they're going to come from. You look at Ida, and he performed okay. He held the ball up, but like, then what? There's nobody around him to pass the ball to. There's nobody in the box. So, we don't have Robbie Keane. We don't have Damien Duff. We don't have these players. Where do you get them? You can't go out and buy them. All we can do is like hope and wait and hope that somebody pops up somewhere. Like, that's just the next. Not like Robbie Keane. That might be a bit difficult to get as many goals as he is right now. It's looking a long way off. But I don't even know where you look. Like, Bamford is quite clear that he never wanted to play for Ireland anyway. But do we need to go down that route again a bit more and try find somebody on the granny rule and just cap them?
Yeah, well, that plays into the wider conversation of Ireland, and something that really cropped up, I think, in these three games is the way that Ireland are trying to develop this brand of football, and what Stephen Kenny's role is in it. Because Stephen Kenny admitted after the Azerbaijan game for the first time that his idea of what he was supposed to do is get this team ready for Germany 2024. So that's 2 years' time. And then that came as a surprise to everyone, because that hasn't been made clear so far. But if you look at the roadmap, I guess that ultimately should have been obvious to everyone, that this World Cup campaign was not going to be one that we qualify for, the one that we're aiming to have as the ultimate goal. With the under-21 setup, with the under-20 setup, under-17 setup, this is going to be a long-term strategy. But it plays into the culture war that's going on between what I call Irish football fans and Republic of Ireland fans. I would even specify that even further with Republic of Ireland men's international fans, because I would argue that a lot of these fans do not actually support the women's team when they're playing, or the under-21s team when they're playing. It's the Republic of Ireland international men's team that they support, not Irish football. And the difference between the two is so stark and so obvious, because I would, I'm making vast generalizations to support my own theory here. Don't get me wrong, but I would argue that a lot of people didn't know who Gavin Bazunu, Alameda, Troy Parrott, even Jimmy McGrath, for example, what he was doing in Scotland. I would argue that they don't know what they're doing, know what clubs they're playing for, have ever seen them play before this campaign, or what Stephen Kenny has done, or the issues that is so entrenched within Irish football, within the grassroots level, where they're getting absolutely slaughtered by the GAA when it comes to the community aspect of it, and funding, and jerseys, and even just coaches within the Irish structure, how expensive it is to do the coaching badges in Ireland, how much of a deadlock that people are at when it comes to trying to get those coaching badges, and the funding issues that comes with that. So what they see is the results. What they see is Stephen Kenny losing games to Luxembourg and drawing games with Azerbaijan. But what they don't see is how the fix is not going to come within 12 games. The fix is going to come within 12 years, potentially, maybe 20 years. And it will be a long road to get to that point. But ultimately, that road leads to a much better place and a much more secure place for Irish football to thrive. But I don't know if people have the patience for it. And I think it does come down to the football culture within Ireland. The way that people support football within Ireland is largely Premier League based. It's largely watching Liverpool, Manchester United, Man City, Arsenal, Everton, all these teams on the TV. And if something's going wrong with them, they just buy more players. They just wait to the transfer market. Raphael Varane comes into the defense and shores it up. That's not how international football works. That's not how Irish football works. And it's not how things are going to get fixed. And sacking your manager and replacing them with Sam Allardyce, that's not going to work either, Arthur.
No, definitely won't. I suppose it's kind of interesting then, the dichotomy between, there's obviously, then you'll see a clear split between necessarily what the senior team is doing and what's happening as a broader, in terms of broader developments. Like, they're obviously not going to be, I suppose, one and the same. Like, Stephen Kenny could have won all 12 games, but it would, or whatever, he could be top of the group in qualifying now, and I suppose it would no more assure the future of Irish football than if we were in the situation we're in now. But I'm wondering, I don't know, like, from your perspective, like, are we on kind of the right track towards that broader growth and development towards something more sustainable? Or, I mean, is this kind of Stephen Kenny's battle in and of himself?
See, I think he's fighting a losing battle, especially for his own career. I would say that he's going to leave Irish football in a better place, but his reputation might not be intact by the end of it. That, right, he might be a martyr for Irish football in a way. And I've spoken to, a couple of people about this, and the issues within Irish football are so deep that the Irish international men's manager cannot fix it. He alone cannot fix it. The FAI have to fix it. Communities have to fix it. And it's going, I mean, Luxembourg are aside, and I don't know if anybody listened to this week's Second Captains and heard Ken Early's rant at Murph about the sort of arrogance within Irish football that we should be beating teams like Luxembourg and Azerbaijan. And I agreed largely with his point, because Luxembourg, for example, their manager has been in charge of their international team for 13 years. 15 years ago, in the mid-2000s, they restructured their entire football organization. And I know you're talking about a smaller country here, but they face largely the same issues as Ireland, in the sense that they've got a brain drain in terms of talent going to bigger leagues in Europe. How do you shore that up? What they did was they put incentives in place for players to stay longer in Luxembourg, in the Luxembourg League, by paying for their college, by helping them get a college education, by helping them, by giving them some extra incentives in terms of money, in terms of transport, in terms of, just helping them flesh out this career within football. And then if they're good enough to go to the better leagues, yes, go and develop in those better leagues. And now Luxembourg have moved up 100 places in the FIFA rankings, because they're seeing the fruits of their development and what they did. Even a broader example, England, for example, look at what they did. Look at how they are suddenly producing number 10 after number 10 after number 10. That's not an accident. That was a plan that they put in place to do that, and they finished out that plan. It took a while, but they're finally now at a stage where they're competing at major tournaments. The same with the France team when they ripped it up after Euro 2000, and now they won the World Cup, and I know they failed at the Euros this year, but that's what these French players came from, a plan. And the same with Germany, who won the World Cup. 20-year plans that took. Ireland don't seem to have that plan. They just seem to be trying to hope that Stephen Kenny will fix all of those issues by bringing a few young lads into the international setup.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at the grassroots, like, was it the other day saying there's no employees in any of the Irish academy clubs. So if it's not getting from that, if it's not going from that level, then how is it? You need to filter down, but you also need to filter up. So you need to put the resources and the funding into training coaches and getting kids to have fun at a young age, because they're competing with rugby, they're competing with GAA. How do you if they don't see the players on their national team doing something, how are they going to stay on board? Like, you know, they need somebody to inspire them, and that's going to be at coaching level, when they're just going out having fun with their mates at a young age, and then you can work from there.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke to the FAI underage development officer a couple of weeks ago on the show about the split between schoolboys and the underage structure within Irish football. So the League of Ireland clubs have their underage teams in the underage League of Ireland, and then the schoolboys are competing with that, and it's almost a mishmash of people who think the schoolboys is the route to go and people who think the underage structure is the way to go. And ultimately, you're not getting many places fast, because some teams are using the underage structure to develop those players. Some people are using the schoolboys, and Bows are linked up with St. Kevin's, and that's helping them with players. But are those players developing in the right structure, in the right league? And there's so much to do and so little money to do it that it's an issue. Arthur, I did want to get your thoughts on one thing, because you're what I would call a GAA man. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Or is Sligo GAA man?
Well, no, yeah, no. I mean, I'm from just outside Sligo town, so like it's more kind of football there. But I would have gone more football. But go on.
Well, as a Sligo man, for example, because Sligo was a weird anomaly within Irish football, is that it is a football town more than it is a GAA town, really.
Yeah, in town, yeah, for sure.
So one thing that is interesting to me is the community aspect within the GAA and how they have, soaked up. The GAA is about community. It is about volunteers. It's about families getting together at the weekend to play with your friends, to play with your teammates. You play with the same players the whole way up through the underage structures, and you play with them in seniors, and then you volunteer as a coach, and you coach the next level of players coming through. And the example I always use is Balbuffet, where you walk into the town, there's a stadium on the right hand side that's world class, has a training facility beside it, has stands on 3 out of the 4 sides of it, and on the left hand side there's a shed. The right one belongs to the amateur organization within the town, the left one belongs to the team playing in a professional structure. So the influence within the GAA and I suppose the competition with that, how much do you think that plays a role in Irish grassroots football, I guess?
Yeah, I suppose it's very interesting when you think about it. It's a similar enough-ish situation in Sligo. I mean, the showgrounds now is beautiful for Sligo Rovers players, no. But I suppose Markievicz Park, where the footballers and hurlers occasionally get to play, has been kind of, I suppose, renovated a good while ahead of time. It's been that the same way it's been for quite a long time. Despite, basically no matches being played there recently, and not just COVID allowing for that, but just in general. Sligo very rarely seem to get to play at home, certainly in the championship. I mean, in terms of, I don't know, it seems to me that it shouldn't really be a detractor. Like, you can't, in an ideal world, you'd imagine that you could pretty happily play both. Certainly, from a participatory point of view, you could pretty happily play both until it kind of comes to, I suppose, a crux age where you've kind of made your mind up one way or another. But at that stage, you probably have so many involved that it wouldn't really make a difference. It'd be kind of just negligible who picks what way. But I mean, I don't know. I presume, for people involved, I suppose, in football, soccer administration as well, that it must be incredibly frustrating to look at how the GAA, I suppose, it's currently at county level, certainly how successfully generally it is run. The fact that there's, at least, I suppose 32 counties, varying degrees to how they're all going. But like, imagine trying to have 32 League of Ireland teams. Like, like there's one team and, well, there's two teams in Connacht, but one League of Ireland Premier Division team in Connacht. Like, it's just, in terms of, I don't know. I think football will be setting itself up for a fail if it's necessarily trying to have to go after the GAA to try and claw back anything like that. I think you'd be better off trying to build something kind of in sort of symbiotic to it rather than trying to take away, because it's just like, even in a county like Sligo, like, and obviously you can't say too much, but even in a county like Sligo, like, which is you kind of, anyone sort of within their own community, and I'm sure it's the case across the country, like, where there's always problems within GAA. Like, there's always what seem like catastrophic issues and county board issues and everything else like this. But yet everything still kind of goes along quite nicely, and everything sort of, there's not the same sort of, there's never an issue with players. There's never an issue with, anyway, that's a different sort of, for a different podcast. But all in all, I do think football, probably you have to kind of go your own way. You're not going to break into too much into the GAA stranglehold in different communities. I mean, it's Paul Rouse you want to get for that. Yeah. Talk about that, how that's built.
Well, we might get Paul Rouse onto the show at some stage. We will finish up with the Irish talk. I just want to get your thoughts. So before we finish up, Ireland, Stephen Kenny, is it going to eventually work out, Emma, do you think?
I think I agree with what you said earlier. I think he may not have finished with the reputation that he probably would want or deserve, but you'd hope that there's a long-term plan that will leave Irish football in a better place, and that probably has to be the goal over the next 4, 5, 6 years, like, because it's not going to be a quick fix. So, I wouldn't let him go just yet, because I don't know who you can bring in that's going to do any better and turn results around at such a short period of time.
Arthur, is
can I just turn that back on you? I'm just curious what you think, like, at some stage or another, say, unless it ends up like the situation with Luxembourg, that Stephen Kenny, say he leaves in sort of successful things. So he qualified for Euro 2024, 26 World Cup's a bit of a bust, and he leaves. Where do you see him going next?
Well, Dundalk might be in the first division next season, so it might not be back to Dundalk. It's a very interesting question. I mean, international football is generally where you end your career. It's not generally where you make a name for yourself, unless you're doing, like, a Mancini on it and, completely revitalizing what people think of your ideas as a manager. So, I mean, I'd say any League of Ireland club would bite their hand off to have Stephen Kenny back at their club after this. But in terms of where he could, like, maybe mid to low championship, I'm not really sure how this ends up for Stephen Kenny, what the end game really is, unless he retires. Because, I mean, I think the biggest hole that I can point in the argument of the anti-Stephen Kenny brigade is that, I don't even fully think that Stephen Kenny will be the man who, eventually is a successful manager for Ireland, or what even a successful manager for Ireland looks like. But I mean, I'm not saying Stephen Kenny is the only person capable of doing this with Ireland, but you need someone who is minded like Stephen Kenny, who is going to stick with it regardless of what it does to his own career. And he said that himself after the Azerbaijan game, that he's going out of his own back to do this, regardless of what the backlash is. So I think you need those sort of figures to make radical change. That's the biggest issue. But yeah, in terms of that, after this, I'm not sure what he does. It largely depends on how much time he gets.
I suppose Michael O'Neill is the prime example of it going right. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what you're saying, kind of, when he went to Stoke, whenever, like, it seems like that'll be kind of a, but again, maybe he doesn't have the hunger for that.
Yeah. Well, if he gets Ireland to the Euros in a couple of years' time, and Ireland do well at the Euros, that's essentially what Michael O'Neill did. I mean, his opener for Northern Ireland was a disaster as well, but eventually it led to quite a fun time to be a Northern Ireland fan. So Yeah, it's an interesting time for Irish football. It won't be boring, and it never lacks coverage anyway. So this, I guess, is a good time to wrap up the week of Irish football coverage on Team 33. We do have a return to Premier League and a return to WSL this weekend, so we're going to chat about that after the break. So we'll take a short break. Back after this.
Team 33. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Now, welcome back to Team 33. Enda Coll here with you in the company of Emma Carroll and Arthur O'Dea. So we finished off with the Ireland chat for the week. There might be more of that on OTB Football Saturday tomorrow, if you want to tune in for that at 3 o'clock, although the All-Ireland final is this weekend as well. So who knows, the GAA and football might be competing for some coverage this weekend as well. The big news for the Premier League is this weekend sees the return of Cristiano Ronaldo to Manchester United. If you haven't heard from the multiple announcements that Manchester United have made on their Twitter account, or the massive Ronaldo portrait that has been erected outside Old Trafford this morning, Ronaldo is returning and he is wearing the number 7 shirt. The Newcastle game this weekend is all going to be about Ronaldo, just like the Ireland-Portugal game was all about Ronaldo. And his return to Manchester United has been all about Ronaldo. Before we get into what he does for the team, I want to get your thoughts on the sort of pettiness behind a grown man needing to wear the number 7 jersey for his brand in order to play for the team. There was some weird maneuvering the Manchester United had to do to get Ronaldo into his classic CR7 jersey. And it even took Daniel James leaving the club to Leeds United in order to get Edison Cavani his 2021 number that he wears for Uruguay, so that Ronaldo could take his number 7 jersey that he has always worn. So, I mean, it's not as if Ronaldo loves himself too much here, Arthur, is it?
No, it's pretty dispiriting, isn't it? It's pretty grim that's kind of, again, such a big part of the branding, that everything around it, that it kind of sort of exemplifies what I think isn't really, like, I'm sure from a football point of view, it'll be an interesting move. It'll be interesting to see what it's like when he's at Man United. But it certainly, after Varane, after Sancho, it certainly doesn't seem to make sense. Really, like I don't know. I don't think, like, and I know we just finished off with Ireland, but if you go back, like, the Portugal game, and I know it seems counterintuitive to suggest that obviously he was literally the difference there because he got his 2 goals and Ireland lost and Portugal won. But I don't think that Portugal team was necessarily best served by sort of playing to what seems like his strengths. Like, obviously there's a degree to good. You're not building a plan around 6 minutes at the end where he might kick into gear. And to be fair to him, like, he was trying, it's not like he's tried. There's no problem with that. But I just don't understand what Man United gain necessarily, certainly long term, by bringing him back. And I don't, not just an age thing. I mean, you could kind of understand when Ibrahimovic came in. That made sense. It made a degree of sense at the time. You kind of bring, and you go all the way back, Henrik Larsson coming in, although it was for a short time. It made sense. I don't get this. I don't understand it. You have, like, unless again players move. I cannot for the life of me. To see again the 7, go back to your 7 shirt thing. It just seems to sum the whole thing up. Like, it's just, what's the point? Like, what are you hoping to? I'd love to know what the plan is. What they're hoping to achieve with this. What is this what they believe will help them win the league?
Yeah. Yeah, Henrik Larsson, but just so, because you bring it up, and I'm never going to not jump on the Henrik Larsson to Manchester United thing. One of the best cameos for a player of his age coming in. Incredible. And just absolutely being amazing. And Alex Ferguson had a great bit in his book about it, saying that despite players in that dressing room who had won multiple Premier League titles, when Henrik Larsson walked into the dressing room, he immediately, people were in awe of this guy because he was just one of the strikers of his generation. So one of the best cameos of all time. The Ronaldo one is an interesting one because I find it hilarious that a company, and I'll call them a company, a club or a company the size of Manchester United, were essentially tricked by an agent into signing this 36-year-old overpaid striker who is well past his prime. It's a weird one that, they looked to be on a natural progression in which they were improving, and the scouting had improved and the players they were buying had improved and they were plugging the positions that they needed to be plugged. And then they got tricked into signing a 36-year-old striker up front who's going to be there for 2 years and going to earn, multi-million-dollar contracts for them. So this is a pure money thing, Emma, I think.
Yeah, clearly. It has to be marketing, and then, as I said, tricked by an agent and tricked by probably Man City again. It's like Alexis Sanchez all over again. Yeah, we're bringing him here. And then it's like uber panic, get Fergie on the phone to him, and then like, no, he's coming here. Like, it just baffles me. But the problem is you just have to look at Twitter to see how Manchester United fans are about it. Like, they're just like, you can't switch it off with the excitement, and you're like, this guy, really? It's I can't really. Like, is he even gonna play all the time? Like, they've just brought Sancho in. They have Cavani. They have Rashford. Like, Fernandez.
Greenwood.
Who takes the penalties? You know what I mean? Like, Ronaldo missed one. Fernandez scored. Who, like, there's a lot of questions to be answered on Saturday, and they probably will get a penalty. So that's kind of my most interesting point. I'm dying to see who takes the penalty. As
you can tell, Emma is a Liverpool fan, so I'm just going to out her for that opinion that she is bringing some bias into it. What would be funny, though, is if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer brought back the 4-4-2 at Manchester United and stuck Edinson, Cavani and Ronaldo up front. It'd be like the return of Alex Ferguson. But we were actually joking about this. I don't know if it was on air or off air last week with Jack O'Toole and Oisin McQuairns. So like the word was that as soon as Man City were in the picture, ex-professionals for United were on the phone to Ronnie to get him to come to United and cop himself on. What Manchester United player do you think still has Ronaldo's real phone number?
Ferdinand would. I think Ferdinand probably has enough of a profile. He'll have it.
Ferdinand. Does Gary Neville have his current number, or does he just say he has his current number?
He might have Mendes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't see, maybe like, I can't see, the likes of, Fabio or, Thomas Cleverley still being in touch with Ronaldo. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's Michael Carrick, maybe.
Yeah. It's hard to know.
Sitting there on the bench going, text.
Apart from the football side of things, Arthur, there's another side to this which we can't avoid, and that's the allegations surrounding Ronaldo to this day. And it's one of the difficulties of modern football, I think, and I guess when it kind of happens and the support is so strong online, it's really difficult to gauge what the real public opinion is on this. But for me, it's going to be one thing from Sky Sports, which is Ronaldo has scored, his 14th goal of the season, and fans are immediately forgetful of what happened. But in the back of your mind, it's really difficult to get past this.
Yeah, I'd say to the forefront of the mind, to be honest. So like the same thing. I know you outed Emma there for Liverpool fans. So I certainly was more vociferously a Man United fan, but so I would have been around 17 in 2008. So that Champions League year win and stuff, and then that amazing team that kind of built from 2007 up to kind of and including maybe 2011, could have won 3 Champions Leagues in 4 years, an amazing team. And you kind of think, I can completely see why what's now nearly, I suppose, 10 years later, why people, Man United fans specifically, are getting so excited about him coming back. Because I suppose it is, I think it's hard to, certainly in what's happened in the decade since, it's hard to kind of underestimate how enjoyable a period that was to be a Man United fan. In terms of how good that team was. It was an insanely good team. And I suppose everything since, as much as you can be a fan of an individual, I would have liked, when he left, always liked to see Ronaldo do well at Real Madrid initially. Quite happy for him to do well there. It was all great. And then, as you say, those allegations come out in, I think, 2018. And I mean, you don't want to go over the details of that again, but it's an incredibly dispiriting thing. I mean, whatever, I suppose people will have their opinion on allegations. everyone's kind of opinion, I suppose, is informed by experience and personal experience and such, and that kind of they'll take that into it. But yeah, I think you're spot on in terms of, I suppose, when this news was filtering through, it really was, I'd say it might have been one in every 10,000 message or whatever related post on Twitter was it a nod to that. Like, I remember this. It's like, and it's not. You're spot on. It won't even take 14 goals from it. It'll never get mentioned unless it becomes a kind of a main news story again. It'll never get mentioned on a million years. If you think of that stuff, think of the amount of stuff like even after, oh God, you don't want to get anything, but even like in the same week that Ronaldo came and the situation with Benjamin Mendy and Man City, what he was being charged with, and you don't want to get into sort of it's an issue within football. It's an issue everywhere. Obviously, all these things. There's no kind of, it's not specific to football, but football does a pretty solid job of kind of always having different things to talk about.
Yeah,
it's never
always moving on so quickly.
Yeah,
it's hard to keep game. Is it becoming more difficult to support high level football at the minute? And I do want to touch on the 3 p.m. blackout and the sort of idea that Ronaldo would somehow be the final nail in the coffin for the 3 p.m. blackout. But I was thinking about this, and you have the Benjamin Mendy stuff, you have the Ronaldo stuff. Robinho, former Man City player, is currently in jail for double sexual assault, and then you have Manchester City, PSG, both owned by authoritarian regimes. The Super League stuff last year, billion-dollar companies furloughing underpaid staff during the pandemic. Shirt prices through the roof. I went to see if I could buy my nephew a United jersey the other day. It was €75 for a 6-year-old's jersey.
Yeah.
Is the Premier League becoming, and high level football, I should say, so it's the super clubs, is it just becoming the post almost post capitalism encapsulation in which nothing in the real world matters as long as the football's good?
Certainly from my point of view, that's how I feel. I mean, I'm like anyone else. I'll watch and I'll enjoy, and there's a degree, I suppose, of, as you're saying, there's a degree of, it's quite difficult to be completely ethically pure with your involvement in anything in society. From where you go to buy your clothes to wherever else. In terms of elite level football, I mean, from my point of view, and it's kind of, so as you said, I'm from Sligo, and I didn't really pay much interest to Sligo Rovers growing up. Not really. I mean, you go to the odd game, and I don't know, but what depends on if it's getting to a certain age or if it's getting to something else or whatever it was. I think partially as well the Super League situation, it just kind of made me kind of take a broader look at it. And I mean, from there going initially to kind of watch LOI, I'll buy that package for the second half of the season, watch more things, making more of an effort to watch. I suppose we couldn't go to games, make more of an effort to watch Sligo Rovers, getting more into that, talk to so obviously a load of friends from Sligo who are Sligo Rovers fans. You're get more into that stream of things. You're trying to, and I mean, it's a much more rewarding situation. I don't want to sound as if it's more pure or it's more thing, but at least it's sort of somehow relatable, and it's kind of you're driving. So I remember distinctly driving down from the house to the train station, going back from Sligo to Dublin relatively recently, and just seeing a couple of the players in their tracksuits walking across back from the showgrounds from training. There's something about it that's quite nice. It's just, and the football's not as good, obviously. There's no, that's why it is where it is, but it's still, I'd agree wholly with you, entirely with that, in terms of trying to just kind of, falling a little bit out of love with it, I suppose.
Yeah, you don't want to be lecturing people, but I always say, because I think people judge the League of Ireland without actually experiencing it. And by experiencing it, I don't mean watching the game that's on RTE. I mean going to a match, and it sort of ties into our conversation from earlier. And it ties into what we're going to talk in a sec about the 3 p.m. kickoffs. Going to a match is an entirely different concept to watching a game on TV. It's an entirely different feeling. You meeting people from different parts of your county, your neighbours. You're supporting. I was at the Finn Harps Shamrock Rovers game last week, and the players were just so happy to have fans back there. And there was only about 700 of us, but it was an amazing feeling. It was such a different experience to watching a game that ultimately, when I turn off the game on Sky Sports, that's me done with it. Whereas with Finn Harps, you have the drive home, you have the chat, you have the talk. It's a completely different experience going to a game than it is watching a game on the TV. And I think you connect with the side a lot better if you end up going to the game. And that does bring us to the conversation around the 3 p.m. blackout, because Jason Burt from the Telegraph was arguing that Ronaldo's game against Newcastle, which isn't on TV this week, is seismic enough to abolish the 3 p.m. blackout rule, which has been in place since the 1960s. Emma, I mean, there's two ways of looking at this. It makes total sense for, I suppose, Irish viewers if the 3 p.m. games were available to watch like they are in NBC in the States. But in the UK, I mean, you're essentially putting two fingers up to the smaller clubs and saying, you know what, you can try fight this financial insecurity by yourselves.
Yeah, I think it's one, first of all, like, to just abolish it is probably, for a player, is like, yeah, it goes back to what we were already saying. It's just nuts and crazy, and like, why would you do it for one player and not do it for another? Like, yeah, I know obviously during COVID we had every single game all staggered and televised, and I just think by the end of it, it was like overkill. You almost felt like because it was on, you had to watch it.
Yeah, there's too much on. As a sports journalist who watches football, I couldn't keep up with the Premier League.
You're really weird. You were kind of going, it's on, so yeah, have to watch it no matter what the fixture was. But does it really stop fans going to lower league fixtures if they are shown at 3 o'clock? I don't know if they would. Like, if you support a club and you're going to games, then you're supporting that club. You're not going just because Chelsea City is kicking off at 3 o'clock. I'm going to actually watch that instead of going to support the club that I've always supported. As you said, you get a completely different feeling when you actually go to a game than you do when you watch it on TV.
Yeah, there's a good thread from Dale Johnson from ESPN on this on Twitter that I'll put a link to I'll put it on the Team 33 Twitter, that he explains the issues with the 3 p.m. blackout and why it's not as simple as saying that fans will stop going to these games because the 3 p.m. game's on. Essentially, it's down to the residual fans, so the fans that aren't season ticket holders, that aren't really always attending these games. Is more, sure, there's nothing else to do, we'll head down, because season ticket holders pay their season ticket fee in the summer, so the clubs already have that, but it's the turnstiles cash, the cash in the vendors, the food, things like that keeps these clubs going. And then the argument behind the fact that England, Scotland, and Montenegro are the only countries that have this blackout at the minute. But the reason for that is because no other country has to deal with the sheer amount of games that England have, because Bundesliga has 2 leagues. I know it has the other leagues, but professionally it has 2 leagues. Serie A has 3, La Liga has 3, but none of those games actually clash with the Premier Division, so they don't actually have to deal with the issue of clashing and people not being able to see all 3 of them. So I'd highly recommend going to see and reading that Dale Johnson thread, because it breaks it down really well. But before we finish up, there is WSL football returning to screens as well this year, which is exciting for anybody who is a fan of the WSL or want to be a fan, want to get more involved in it. And I would recommend getting more involved in it, because there is some top level games going on and top level football played in it. Emma, there's a lot of issues with this WSL this year, though, because of, broadcasting is one thing, but facilities is another. So you might run us through some of the biggest issues that have been cropping up over the last week or so.
Facilities is probably one of the biggest issues, and that's it probably goes hand in hand with the broadcasting rights, really. I think it was Karen Kearney talking to Nathan last week kind of described it as almost a vicious circle. If the product is not good enough, then you're not getting the interest, but if you're not getting the money from these rights, how do you make the facilities better, and the circle goes around. So hopefully with this Sky and BBC deal, I think it's worth 8 million a year for 3 years. So they are injecting the money into the clubs, into pitches, into training referees. That they said they were kind of their main things where the money was going to go back into. But at the weekend, some things are already cropping up along the lines of VAR and goal line technology, which isn't in the league at the moment because it's not available at every ground, basically. I suppose over the weekend, we've seen a lot of the games were held in the men's stadiums. So it was argued that, well, this technology is in these stadiums, so it's there. But apparently it's going to cost 2 to 3 million just to get goal line technology into the grounds where the women would normally play their matches. So it's a bit down the pecking order, as was discussed on Sky on Sunday.
Yeah. So were they using the VAR and the goal line technology when the games were in the men's stadium?
No. So there's no VAR, no goal line technology.
Sense.
So, but I suppose it's because not every game was in the men's stadium, and not every game across the season will be in men's stadiums. So you have to have it fair from the start, I suppose. But like, I suppose the goal line technology is probably the basic one. If you can't get VAR in just yet, then you probably need to be looking at goal line technology, because in the opening game last Friday with Man United against Reading, Manchester United were 1-0 up, and just after the second half, Chaplin for Reading just shot a screamer, and it was one of those that's lovely. It bounces off the crossbar and goes down, and you're like, oh, there's nothing like a goal that bounces off the crossbar and goes in. And it was clearly over the line, but the linesperson missed it, and it was ruled off. So, and then United went on to win it 2-0. So that was like a changing moment in that, because it would have been 1-1. So completely different outlook then to the rest of the game. Similarly on Sunday between Arsenal and Chelsea, this is more where the VAR would have came in when it was 2-1, and then Arsenal's Beth Mead went through. It was about 2 yards offside. Again, it was missed in live action, and then Arsenal go on to win 3-2. So again, it cost Chelsea a point. Arsenal fans won't really care because they'll feel like it's a big win over Chelsea, who was probably favourites for the title. And so like it's already causing questions. Emma Hayes, Chelsea manager, obviously wouldn't have been too happy after it, but she was saying that the money needs to stop being an excuse now, that if the technology exists, then they should be on a level playing ground with the men's game. It should be across the board. And she's probably right, to be honest. And I know a few of the other pundits were kind of on the side of, listen, we've other stuff to get sorted first. We need to train the referees in the WSL are not professional. It's a professional league, but the referees are not professional. So when you look at it that way, a lot of training has to go into that, and maybe VAR would assist with that, especially if you're not professional. Maybe it goes hand in hand on that side of things. Getting the grounds right is another thing as well, and especially if the games are being broadcast and expected to be broadcasted now week in, week out on Sky and BBC. The amount of games that's been cancelled in the WSL the last few seasons, especially when winter rolls around, because grounds just aren't good enough. They're freezing over, they're getting waterlogged. Like, I think there was one stage there where Arsenal didn't play a game last season for 5 or 6 weeks, between, obviously COVID was an issue as well, and then the grounds went right. So like, that can't happen when you've got a TV deal. So the money has to go in to make those pitches better. And maybe playing more games in men's stadiums is also the answer to that. So, yeah, a lot of things are rising already in the first week.
Yeah. Well, with the Premier League having issues with VAR and professional referees, I would argue that getting professional referees is an essential thing to do before you get VAR. It seems like you need to train people up to do these jobs, really. In terms of the Irish interest in the league, because I guess, sort of like I would mentioned earlier on, not everybody would be familiar with how the Irish women and all the Irish footballers playing. So Birmingham FC are becoming Ireland FC, essentially. That's what's happening this year. A couple of signings for them, and suddenly Irish interest is flying up in Birmingham.
Pretty much, whether you're a Blue or you're a Villa fan, yeah. There's in the last, just on pretty much on deadline day, a cohort of them signed for Birmingham and Aston Villa. But yeah, Birmingham they've already had Harriet Scott, Irish defender, so she's been there for a few seasons, and then they brought in Louise Quinn, who went straight in as captain. Then we've got Mary Horahan as well, goalkeeper. She signed for Birmingham. She's had a stint at the club before as well. And then I suppose the big ones for us that we should be interested in as well is the players that have signed from the WNL, who've been playing excellent for their clubs this season. For Peamount and Shelbourne, Jamie Finn, Eleanor Ryle Doyle, and Emily Whelan as well. So there's a few players that were really lighting up the WNL, and Eleanor Ryle Doyle was the top goal scorer. So when she gets her chance at Birmingham, it'll be interesting to see how those players step up. Birmingham will have a tough season. They struggled last season. They've lost their manager to Aston Villa. So going across rival lines. And Rusha Littlejohn as well has joined her. So that's Irish interest from the Aston Villa side as well. So that'll be pretty much an Ireland derby when it comes to that match.
And is this just down to nepotism, or why are they signing for Birmingham? Is that like just Louise Quinn and them saying that these are players that you can get on the cheap that are really good that you could potentially sign, or is there a reason that Birmingham and Aston Villa are signing them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Like maybe it was exactly that. Like Birmingham really did have major issues last year. Like they could barely put a squad together. So maybe it was just one of these things of looking around and seeing who we can bring in. And yeah, they've took some of the best players from the Women's National League here at home. So it's a lost air league, but it'll be very interesting and very exciting for them to be able to turn professional as well and try to break into the Irish national team a bit more as well. So
yeah, I can't wait for 20 years down the line when we're having the exact same conversation that we're now having about the League of Ireland and talent going over to England about the WNL. When are the grounds good enough, the referee quality, the whole thing, hopefully it doesn't get as bad as that. Hopefully there is an actual talent development plan in place for the women's team, because God knows we need it at some level of Irish football. Yeah. That's us pretty much done on Team 33 for this week. Emma, absolutely top-notch job on your debut. Arthur O'Dea, same as you. Cheers for joining me today.
Cheers. Thanks,
all right, we'll take a quick break.